Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world. From border to border, coast to coast, and to all that ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. I'm really pleased today. My guest is none other than Mr. Tim Dawson, who's the Chief Technical Officer at Canon Medical. Of course, Canon Medical, well-known entity to all of us, delivers innovative imaging solutions and services. Tim, thanks for joining the Tate Chronicles today.
Thanks, Jim. Happy to join.
You know, there's a few things I want to ask you about and get your input on, things I don't know about, but I'm curious. So hope we can find out I'm digging for some gold here. One of the first things that kind of fascinates me about medical imaging, the whole move towards at-home care. Chronic care, keeping people out of the hospital, all that kind of stuff. And so what are the options presently or maybe moving forward for medical imaging at the home environment?
Sure. I mean, there have been a lot of really exciting advances. I know we've got some local options that I use here. I live in the Twin Cities, and we've got a provider called Nice Healthcare that my employer, that Canon Medical uses, and they'll actually, drive out to your home. Back in the COVID days, I was able to get a COVID test at home when they came to visit me, and they drive out in a van, and they've got remote imaging equipment that's available. If you have a fracture, they can or if you think you might, they can take an X-ray right there. Send that over the wire back to hospital. They can look at it right there themselves and take a quick field check on it, but they can send that back. We actually have imaging semi trailers, so they can have a whole CT or MR. CT anyway scan. MR be a little bit more tricky, but those things can be delivered, and the exciting capability is to then send those images over the wire back to radiologists that can look at them on a near real-time basis. So it really kind of depends on the type of imaging. Some things you can do right there, in the van or truck. Some things need to be sent back over the wire. But there's some really exciting capabilities that are available even now. This is not just coming soon, but these are things that are available.
Tim, I can see the real importance of that. If let's say somebody goes to visit a patient at home, whether it's a home care or a provider or whoever's going in, and they need a chest x-ray because they're worried the patient may have pneumonia. So that chest x-ray can be taken. And then the ability to get a reading of that image so antibiotics could be started as soon as possible. Is that something that, as opposed to days, can now be done in a matter of hours or maybe even less?
Maybe even less, yeah. I
Wow.
mean, there are all sorts of types of screening capabilities available. Yeah.
Okay, another topic I've been hearing a lot about, and I'd like to hear your opinion, is the state of AI and imaging. So I run across all these studies about how accurate AI systems are for scanning an image and picking up abnormalities. What's that all about, and are we really there yet?
We're making some great advancements in that, industry-wide, not just Canon Medical. We have a lot of great technology in this. I'm often hearing on the radio that people saying that radiologists will be replaced by AI in a few years, and I don't think that's any realistic at all. I do, however, like another meme that I've seen, which is that AI is not going to replace you. Somebody using AI is going to replace you, and that I've seen that meme applied to every different type of industry, and this certainly applies to radiologists. So radiologists need to be using AI to make themselves go faster. We have a shortage, worldwide, of radiologists. The need and the increase in imaging has outstripped the capability of radiologists to do it, and they're being pressed constantly to go faster and faster and faster, less clicks, more scans read in the same amount of time. And really the only way to keep up with that explosion is with AI. This is actually increasing with the scans are even getting larger. So some types of scans are sub-millimeter that create very fine access. And if a radiologist has to look at every single one of those images, they're going to be overwhelmed. And so the use of AI to both sort of help them know where to look, and then to also as a backstop to double check, hey, you want to look here, here, and here, types of things can be really valuable to make sure that nobody misses anything. And this can take the range anything from automatically scanning and finding stroke analysis is probably one of the biggest ones that happens. Time is brain with stroke, right? So as the longer that it takes to get a treatment, the more problematic it is, and so you really want fast turnaround on that sort of thing. In other areas, the AI can just make sure that you don't forget something, or can help you streamline your reads to make sure that you're looking at a current scan and a prior scan, and make sure that everything's all lined up, so you don't have to as a radiologist doesn't have to do a bunch of fiddly clicks here and there in order to make sure that it's all lined up so that they can do a comparative review. All of that can be fully automated. So there's a plethora of capabilities. One of the biggest ones that's really expanding is X-ray, chest X-ray analysis. Finding all of the things that you can find out of a simple chest X-ray, and then really highlighting that and prioritizing which ones they need to look at first. Hey, we think we maybe have detected this. Please double check that so we can get treatment started as soon as possible. Lots of exciting capabilities that are going on in the industry.
Well, and I'm sure, Tim, it varies from country to country and healthcare system to healthcare system. But in the U.S., what's the state of AI work with images, like you were talking about strokes? Is it something that a lot of hospitals have, or we're at 20%, we're going to 80%? Where are we at?
It really depends on the subspecialty. There are some areas, again, like the stroke, that have quite a bit of adoption, right? Other areas, it's a lot more hesitant. Honestly, one of the things that drives it the most is reimbursement. There's a big part of that, and as well also safety. Making sure that you've got all of the 510Ks, all the sorts of clearances that you need. The FDA is very careful about making sure that the AIs are operating properly, and so it kind of really depends on what you're going for, and you have to be very careful what your intended use is of your medical device. When we're working on a new capability, there's a pretty stringent set of requirements. One of the other interesting things that's happening is a lot of some educational and other institutions are developing their own AI. The rules for that are a little bit different. So the rules to develop something and then sell it as a product versus the rules for an institution to develop something internally and to begin to use it. There's a little bit of a difference. They can have a little bit more freedom to say, hey, let's try this out, versus us building something and then taking it out to the market. There's a different level of scrutiny applied. And that's really important because when you're developing something internally, you need to be able to try that out, right? And the hospitals that are doing this need to be able to explore those various avenues. And of course, they need to do it in a safe way. And so I think that's holding the industry back a little bit between the amount of scrutiny to get it done safely, but also the reimbursement. Somebody's got to pay for this.
Yes.
I was on a panel at the Society for SIM for imaging informatics and medicine, and the conference there, we talked with it was a mix of providers and companies like myself, and we were all going through with the in terms of all the difficulties of getting things into production. And so there's a lot of excitement but it's being held back a little bit, and I'm hoping that we kind of overcome that in the next few years.
And so I'm going to date myself a little bit here, Tim. I was a clinical director of a large pulmonary practice for a number of years. And of course, we did lots and lots and lots of chest x-rays, did wet development of those films.
Yeah. Sure.
And then, of course, we got the digital systems. But what the hospitals, of course, had the traditional PAC systems, and they were built to consume data and display data, not for interoperability.
Right.
So, what the architecture or the network, or what's the state of interoperability of images, not only from a radiographic domain to somebody's going to do an impression, but just if patients wanted access to their own images?
That's a great question. So, let's start with interoperability, because the PAC systems, were developed inherently as a silo, right? I mean, back in the days, when a lot of these systems were created, that was the state of the art at the time. It was difficult to develop all of this and as independent components. The architecture wasn't evolved enough back then, and so when you bought a system, it came with the viewer and the storage, and they were intrinsically tied together. The performance of computing at that time was such that you had to do that in order to be able to load the images quickly enough. Now, of course, we've made quite a few advances in technology in the intervening 20 years, and so in the early to mid 2010s, 2012, 2015, we were working with the DICOM standards body to create a technology called DICOM Web. And there was a technology that Canon Medical and other companies sort of co-developed called MINT, which stood for Medical Imaging Network Transport. And we were trying to sort of take DICOM, which is the standard for that all the scanners use for imaging transfer and all of that, and move that into the web world, and move that using standard web protocols like HTTP. And there's a lot of capabilities that are unlocked when you do this. Early on, PAC systems didn't have a whole lot of interest in doing that. I remember talking to a PAC provider, I'm not going to name names, at the time, and they said, "Well, why would I want to do that? Then somebody else can get at the images that are in my system."
Yes.
And so there was definitely a sort of an intrinsic sort of, if I own the data as I'm the vendor, then I can make sure that the customers will continue to re-up. That's not the world that we want to live in, right? The data needs to be interoperable. There are so many different capabilities that you can add to medical imaging, and you need to make it fully accessible. And AI brings a lot of that. Even before AI, Canon Medical has a lot of advanced visualization tools that were managed by techs, and the techs would do the workups on the software, creating these really impressive 3D images, and analyzing and finding all sorts of tumors or brain aneurysms, strokes, all the sorts of things before the AI existed. And all of that needs access to the data. And if all of that is locked up or very difficult to access, then you don't get all of the benefits. So I really believe that DICOM Web, which was the sort of successor to the MINT standard that I mentioned, that's when we standardized it. And it's taken a few years to take off, but it really has. A lot of the vendors that I'm working with today provide that capability. So then a program can make a web call, and get access to all of the metadata about a study. Tell me, what pictures are in the study, and let me understand, and then let me pull out just the ones that I need in order to do the proper analysis. For example, some AI programs don't need every slice of a 2,000 slice CT image. They just need one that's I need a cross section of the heart. And I'm going to do some analysis on that, right? So you don't need to pull the entire 2,000 images down. You just need to grab the metadata, look at what you want, grab the pieces that you want. Now, that's possible now with DICOM Web.
Wow.
And so that's really incredible. And that level of interoperability is really how we've architected our systems, and how I've been encouraging other vendors to do the same, is architect around that that interoperability. That allows you to separate the components. You can put the storage and make that accessible, not just on a file system, which frankly is at risk for ransomware. If you're just storing, if your PAC system is just storing images on a file system, those are at risk because once a bad actor gets in, they can encrypt those files, etc. It's far better to access those files using a secure protocol, over HTTP like S3. S3 is a industry standard protocol for storage access. Amazon created it. Everybody copied it. Thank you, Amazon, for creating this. It's API and letting everybody copy it, because we can build on top of that to make everything much more secure. So now we've got speed and security. Things are getting a lot better with the industry here, and that level of data neutrality and all of that really helps us with the interoperability.
Let me address our audience for a moment. If you're just joining us, I'm Jim Tate. On this episode of the Tate Chronicles, I'm speaking with Tim Dawson, the Chief Technical Officer at Canon Medical. One of the potential advantages of electronic health records, electronic health data, is not so much from the treatment standpoint, but the ability to get all that data, get it de-identified, and use it for research purposes. Is there any potential to de-identify images and use them for some type of research? Or
absolutely. I mean, we do that all the time. So we have customers that use research PAC systems, or research DNA, a vendor neutral archive, right? So you send all of the images in. Each DICOM image in a data set has a copy of the metadata for that, which includes patient level information, study level information, which is like, okay, the episode of the scan that you're doing, and then information about each image, and all of that metadata is really valuable for mining. But you really kind of want to strip the patient identifying pieces off before doing that, and the DICOM standard has some really good recommendations for how to do that. Which of these metadata tags you can keep, which ones you can remove. It's important to do it correctly. I've worked with some the identification tools that kind of took a sledgehammer to it, and unfortunately the data sets that you get out the other side aren't terribly useful. It's really important, if you're analyzing a 10-phase CT of a heart, to know the time codes between them and which phase that you're looking at. If you have a de-identification routine that just strips all of that out, well, you don't really know kind of what you're looking at, and it can really make that hard. But if you do it, and that's why thankfully there are some really good guidelines around that. There is a limit, though, to how much you can de-identify data, because if you have, for example, a head CT, there's a lot of facial reconstruction that you can do off of that. So it really kind of depends. There's still a level of trust. There's still a level of confidentiality needed with some of the data, even after you've de-identified it, depending on the data sets.
One thing I'm curious about that we're going to see moving ahead, Tim. Of course, the idea of centralizing these DICOM images, I would imagine that that can help the whoever the radiologist who's reviewing these images, how that workload can be spread out. If all of your images aren't just in basically a drawer that only you can access.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the key things that we love. If back in the early days of PACS, each hospital had its own PAC system.
Correct.
Yeah. Sometimes, you'd have multiple PAC systems, one for radiology, one for cardiology, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you get in the U.S., there's a lot of aggregation of healthcare systems, right? So you have a large IDN that has multiple hospitals in it, and then you end up with a bunch of data silos there. Well, you really need to move all of those together. That's where the vendor neutral archive came into be, and all of that sort of capability to put all of the images centrally. But the access control to that, again, the DICOM web really is helping that a lot, so that you don't have to do as much work to do sort of forethought in terms of pushing copies of images everywhere. So I got a patient coming into this clinic, let me push all of their images over to that clinic so that the radiologist there can read them. that can be a real challenge to make sure that you get everything everywhere, and if you miss something, it's not visible to them. The DICOM web really helps that. It also helps, with physician burnout, right, and with spreading the load of the radiologist, because if you're overloaded in one area and you've got a few people sick and you've got some availability, you can load balance that if you've got the images centralized, because then you can have a radiologist at another facility as long as they're credentialed and all of that, because that matters. You have to be within the right state and all of that, but as long as they're credentialed to do those reads, they can pick up and share that workload. So you get kind of the double benefit of the visibility to not just your current images, but all of the priors, as well as the ability to share the workload, and hand that read off to somebody else if you're overloaded at your location.
One of the things I wonder about, Tim, is the concept of patient access to images. And the reason I bring that up is because if somebody's had a condition and they've had quite a bit of imaging work done and they move from one coast to the other, and they're at a new practice, they want that new practice to have access to those images. I'm not sure what the state of a practice to practice or a hospital to practice accessing those. But if most people are familiar with portals, if there was some way to redirect an image or download, of course these files are too large to download, but to forward a hyperlink or something. What's going on around there? Patient access and sharing of images.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. So a lot of hospitals have, if you have an EMR like Epic, right? There's a tool, Epic MyChart, that my hospital uses, and I can go in there. Yeah, and I can go in there and look at my chart, look at whatever recent blood work I've had or whatever results for upcoming appointments. But I can also take a look at imaging, and so that's something that we've implemented this with our customers as well. So the ability to access that imaging, to launch a viewer and pull my own medical images out of that archive, and so that I can see them and make them available. I can download them, so I can then bring them to another facility if they don't have a sharing link. There are image sharing networks that exist. There's point-to-point networks between hospitals. We facilitate a lot of that. There's plenty of other vendors in the space that do that as well. But yeah, if you end up with needing to see a provider that isn't part of that or isn't connected with your facility, you can download these images. They can be large, but they're I don't know, these days, the USB keys, I can buy a 128 gig USB stick for $40 or less. And so if I need to have something like that, I can get it. It's becoming increasingly rare for people to get a copy of a DVD with their images on it. I had a wrist surgery a few years ago, and I asked for copies of the images, mostly because I'm kind of a nerd about this, right? I work in the industry. I want copies of all of my medical images, and that facility didn't have a way for me to download them over the web. So I had to ask them to burn a DVD for me, and then I had to find a DVD player, hook it up to my computer and upload it.
Yes.
But I was able to get those. That's kind of the old way to do that. More and more now. It's all being done electronically.
One thing that's going to be fascinating to see moving forward, we have the whole wave of interoperability processes. We had the HIEs and the RIOs and all those things, and now on the horizon, hopefully closer than further away, is TEFCA, to exchange health information, where a provider or a patient can poll the TEFCA network, which is a network of networks, and initially pull in diagnostic information, medication information, and that kind of stuff. I think imaging studies, not just the text of an impression, but the actual imaging studies, if and when that gets hooked into TEFCA, I think that's going to be a great thing moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that is a with DICOM standards and DICOM web are really helping with that, and a lot of that is coming to play with HL7 Fire. There are new protocols on that are tying in with imaging.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to having all of that be standardized. we really believe in that interoperability. I mean, our DNA before we were Canon Medical. I was part of a smaller company that Canon Medical bought. We've got 3 or 4 other companies in the family here that are all part of my team. They were all independent, smaller companies originally, and so we have that DNA, internally that says that we want to build best of breed solutions that interoperate well, as opposed to something that's really monolithic. And I think that's absolutely the spirit of what Tech is trying to do here, is like, let's build that interoperability so that you can make these components work together, and that's absolutely the vision of the future.
Well, that's it. Yeah, interoperability. Tim, we're almost out of time, but let me ask you, how can our listeners find out more about Canon Medical, as well as a web address, maybe get some more information?
Yeah. Sure thing. Thanks. So we have a website is mi.medical.canon. Let me repeat that again, because that does not end in a com. Okay, this is
right.
MI as in medical imaging .medical.canon. And so apparently .canon is a top level domain. So who knew, right? Until we were acquired by Canon, I was kind of surprised by that. So mi.medical.canon. You can find out all about us.
Okay, great. I've spent some time there in the last few days. There's some great blog posts and recorded webinars there. So a lot of good information available there, just for the for providers, not even radiology specialists. To our audience, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles, and I, of course, offer a special salute to my guest today, Tim Dawson, Chief Technical Officer at Canon Medical. Tim,
thank you very much, Jim.
Yep, thanks for coming aboard today.
All right, appreciate it.
You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. That's healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.